Hi there, welcome back to part three of the Tony Drayton aka Tony D interview. And the first two were fantastic, so I'm really looking forward to this one as well. So, hello, Tony, and thank you for
Hello,
coming.
hello, Gerard. Here we are back again.
Yes, absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
you left me in a field in Wiltshire last
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
Somewhere in a field
yes.
in Wiltshire.
So that's where we'll pick it up. Just for anybody who hasn't seen the first two parts, basically we've been through your life covering being born and living in Scotland and so on, and doing Ripped and Torn fanzine, being a punk rock squatter in London, doing Killy Pet Puppy fanzine, although we haven't finished that bit yet. And yeah, I mean, I could give 10 minutes of a praise, couldn't I suppose, but that's like kind of that's the sort of seriously big headlines in what happened. So we left you in a field in Wiltshire, as you say. You and your fellow puppy type people went to Stonehenge Festival,
That's
and
correct, yeah.
yeah, and this is a kind of interesting phase, isn't it? Because this is where there's a starts being a kind of crossover between the punk rockers have become punk rock squatters and so on, or housing co-op dwellers, and the kind of more festival going hippies and stuff. Were
Uh,
you aware of that being a sort of a change?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I think Mark Mobb had a lot to do with this, and the mob themselves coming from that environment. And they used to go to these festivals before punk anyway, or, as they were growing up. And they brought that knowledge with them to London when they moved to London. And I think when the Tibetans actually moved into Hackney, into a bus garage at the back of where the Hackney squats were, the Hackney punk squats, and that was a real crossover. And I think Brown Road in Hackney was the road, and that was a real melting pot, really, of both cultures. And I'll say we go right back to '77 when I moved to London and moved living in Frestonia. There's the whole kind of hippie people. There were buses parked up then along Freston Road and Brownley Road. So it was there, but I wasn't really aware of it as me being part of it, me ever being a part of that
Mm.
until I go to Stonehenge with Mark on Mark's suggestion, I suppose, and actually seeing it for myself, seeing it for the first time, what what was like, what actually the impact of it was quite stunning. And I think that there had been a thing with before the year before I'd gone when Poison Girls played, I think Flux of Pink Indians played, and there's a lot of trouble between the bikers and the punks. Or I say trouble, the bikers were sort of like chasing the punks out of the site, trying to attack them. Luckily, I missed that one. That would have been quite a shock. I think there's some shocking stories about that. But the year after, punk had been assimilated. The hippie people were dyeing their hair. No Nazi armbands, but as Mark P would say, but they were dyeing their hair, um, and the music was drifting more, kind of slightly faster, if you like, faster, slower, songs. There's, and I say music. There's lots of stages everywhere. There's a big main stage that Hawkwind would play, bands like that, proper bands, and there's lots of smaller stages where improvised bands play. A couple of years later, even a year later, I played with Windy Miller and the Windmills, my own band. That's how easy it was to get a gig.
Yeah.
Uh, this may be the first and last time I mentioned Windy Miller and the Windmills, but they played Stonehenge. Um, that
Can you
one,
describe Stonehenge a bit for people who may have no idea what it is?
right. Um,
Festival, that's what it is,
yeah,
obviously.
it's a Yeah, the festival. Yes, yeah. There was a field opposite the stones, opposite the road, where you had the Stonehenge itself. On the other side was a field that, by the time I got there, it was being carved up into sort of walkways, drags, if you like, because it's called the main drags and sidewalks, and there were, along the main drags there were big marquee people, big marquees, things that were having their own gigs or whatever, maybe some commercial stuff, food or drug. There's a lot of drug selling going on. It's the first time you see this. One of the things there's lots of boards with advertising all sorts of drugs and hot knives. I mean, hot knives is one. It's a hot knife. It's a strange world, strange brew to be in. And I see there's this music coming out. People were roaming about, on the people or you could call them as weird, to say. Very, very weird people. And lots of this, I see the buses were all kind of parked a bit further behind the main drags. Big bus, some double deckers, some single deck. These are buses that have been converted into homes, and often painted up on the outside quite psychedelically. And so there'll be the big main stage, the Hawkwind stage, and beyond that is like another field, and there's 2 fields of tents and build makeshift tents. We call them benders. We put branches together and put a tarp over it, and the size of it was mine, as well as the thing itself. The actual site, the fact it went to field after field, was kind of mind blowing. How many people were actually congregating on these? How many weirdos there were? You know, so that was probably another thing, the clarion call to the weirdos. And if it hadn't been for Mark, I would have never known about it. It's never publicized, never put in the mainstream media. It's just absolute counterculture, absolute subculture. And that would run theoretically from June the 1st to June the 30th, with also the main weekend being the solstice weekend, which is what the reason for it was, within the solstice, that people would gather there and have solstice at the stones, and that was some kind of ceremony would go on, which is then that weekend that would be the main weekend, and normally there's a weekend after that, but a lot of people would drift away after that and just come for that weekend, which I think I did the first time. I just did the first weekend, the first one week, and so you saw it in its full glory. And another time I went there, and I think I tried to do the whole month, but I think missed some of the days, but I saw it building up, which is kind of interesting at that part. Let's not jump ahead there. Let's not jump ahead too far. Is that enough description of what Stonehenge is like?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
Like a lot of noise, blasting noise, but just like it's so unexpected. I think was a key as well. Unexpected and lawless. You know, unexpected and lawless are the 2 things.
People wandering around with no clothes on as well, which is something that's markedly different to normal society.
Yeah. There's a few of them.
So how did you feel? How did it affect you and change you? So
It sort of opened my mind to this new world. I think Kiwi Pet Puppy 6, the last Kiwi Pet Puppy, was written about this journey of someone going to Stonehenge and having let's say crisis of consciousness, a kind of I don't know what I actually wrote about opening the mind and about possibilities, and coming back to London and it all being different. And this is very much a kind of a autobiography of what happened to me, but written a bit slightly differently. And I think whether that was the first one, but what happened this first time, as one of these marquees that was set up on the main drag. One was by the Tibetan Ukrainian Mountain troupe, a group of people there. They had lots of buses all parked around in a kind of horseshoe shape around this marquee, and they had bands and some circus shows going on. And beside them, they had a little kind of a workshop environment, which I'd never seen before, with a little low trapeze, and people were juggling and unicycling, and you could go and try things out. And that opened, that was a kind of side issue. I'd never even thought about that before. And but I used to go to that market. I liked that market. I liked what they were doing in there, their kind of music and the way they looked. So this kind of weird, they were slightly more dressy than your naked people. But and also a lot of the other kind of the hippie types that kind of be more like Hawkwindy, more greasy, long hair, greasy clothes. Was the Tibetan crowd seemed to be a bit more sharp, if you like. I remember one of the people used to have a white, used to come on, do the presenters used to come on with a white face with a big black star painted over his eye, and he'd come out there. And I remember, and I used to liked his look. He had a top hat. In fact, I'm wearing a top hat in homage to what's going to happen next in this story. I remember one time an amp didn't work, and he just went into the back of a bus and came out with an amp and plugged it in. And I thought that's so cool. This guy just knows he can fix it, Mr. Fix It.
Yeah, sure.
You can look like that, but you're not just a poser. You can keep things going. You know how to do things. That had an impact on me, and I'm trying to think. I was trying to piece this together last night. When did we go full on into circus? Because Black Sheep Housing Co-op at one point exploded into something we were all juggling. This is where I lived with Mark and other sort of puppy people we did puppy from, and so we were all juggling and fire breathing. There's fire breathing, juggling fire. And I really trying to think, was that 83? Did that kick off in 83 or did it kick off in 84? I've even got pictures of me juggling with people from Brown Road, from the Black Sheep and Grosvenor Avenue. And there's no date on it. I think so. We found out there's a circus day at Covent Garden, which I went to, a whole kind of festival. Maybe it was a street entertainers festival or something, but there was workshops there. But we had taken our own stuff. There's photos of us there juggling our own equipment, which we'd made out of ordinary balls filled with rice and all taped together. So I recognized the equipment. So we had equipment. Was this 83 already? It must be 80. It's a funny time. These kind of so far away and things happen so quickly. And when one time I went to France, we're going to have to jump back a bit now.
Go on, yeah. Jump away.
But back kind of one of my previous trips, which you talked about when I went around Europe for about 6 months. I finished up at one point doing grape picking in the south of France, and I'd gone back to do that again. And again, there's something to do this. I thought I did it the year after. It might have been 2 years after, but I got there and it would change. The grape picking had gone from being just random, being picked up in a field, a farmer picking up 10 people in a field for a week. It suddenly became more organized. It was kind of organized gangs and things like, oh yeah, they'd go to a gang leader and hire, and they would just kind of hire. It's always all been pre-booked and stuff, so it was less free and easy. And I finished up with this guy from Ayrshire, where we were walking. We broke off from the pack. We thought this is not working. Let's go and find something else. So we had just headed off, hitchhiking off into the interior of France, and got picked up by somebody who said, "Are you looking for work?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "We've got a job in a Fabrique de Pommes apple factory."
Okay.
And okay, so we went there and it's packing apples would be coming in from the fields, the farms, in great big crates, and we put them on a conveyor belt, and they'd go off and they'd be graded. This machine would grade them into sizes, and they'd go into different smaller containers to be taken to markets and wholesalers. And they took us on that day. This is how it wasn't, the grape thing failed, but this one, they took us on. This person who picked up hitchhiking was just worked there. They were just another worker there. Didn't own it or anything. And we decided we had nowhere to live, nowhere to stay. So we went and stayed in the field next door to it. So this is because of the grape picking thing. And the reason I'm saying this story is because I was juggling the apples. So I must have been juggling at that point. It must have maybe it was 83, late 83, because the grape picking is about September. So at that point I was juggling. So I'm trying to think how that fitted into my life and this whole story.
What was the appeal of all this circus stuff?
The appeal to me, first of all, straight away, it looked like fun, exciting, and a lot easier than playing a guitar, which is a valid reason for me. I found out I could play guitar, but I hated tuning. Couldn't understand the tuning. I didn't know if I was out of tune or not. It was one of my problems. I just hit a strum away. But with the juggling, so you didn't have that side of it. You had this, and I think I'd seen fire breathers and things on my travels before in France, and at that point I think I was also involved I was starting to write for the music press. So I was doing small little pieces for the music press, and I was getting disillusioned with music. I think it was getting too sold out. I think all the Billy stuff, the rockabilly, psychobilly, punkabilly, Duran Duran Billy, there's a whole bunch. It all became manufactured. This is becoming a bit like manufactured, and these subcultures, which were subcultures, have now been taken over and they're being infiltrated, and like fake bands are being put into it. And that's the ones we're writing about. And I was kind of thinking, well, this circus performance was, I think there's also a touch of me actually working for the music press. I was getting away from being a fanzine writer, being immediate. And there's another big barrier between what I was writing and the people reading it. Whereas the circus stuff led to the idea of busking, where you just be, you and the audience, and what you do at the end of the day, they give you money in your hat. There's no middleman. There's nothing in between you, what you're presenting, and then watching it or even joining in. Of course, the busking a lot of time is getting people to join in. And that, which is also a major part. I enjoyed all that participation and just getting people involved, and it became almost like a communal. Some very good buskers I saw at the time, it'd be almost like a religious experience for everyone. They build it up and have everyone chanting and doing things, and then they'd come to a crescendo, and it would just be, everyone would feel like they've gone somewhere with this. Maybe like a band can do this sometimes as well. A good band, a good tune. If the band's, the front band's speaking to the audience, they can do this, have the same feeling, but you can do that standing out in the street.
And of course, when you're in the street, your audience is completely random. If you're in a band, they've come to see you or the other band, or they like the venue or whatever, or they're part of the subculture. But the street, you're just talking about an absolute cross section of the general public, which is quite a difference as well.
Yeah, and there are things I always like. If you busk at something like Covent Garden, people go because they want to see. They've gone to the expectation of seeing a performer, and the same with some parts in France or Germany or Holland. There are places that are known for the performers, so in that sense, it is a bit contrived in that way. People have gone for a show rather than actually just stopping someone at random in the street they don't expect to see somebody. But I've done both. But I think it's what you're saying as well. Is the only commitment is to come down to see somebody. They're not actually come down to see a person. You're not advertised as. Today is Tony's going to be on the street at 2 p.m. So if they see you, it's lucky they see you. If they don't see you, it's their loss. So, and that's one of the reasons I think that, whether that was hindsight, after starting to enjoy juggling, enjoy all the fire breathing and everything, or whether that was kind of part of my reason for pushing at it. And again, I saw people in France. Maybe I brought that back. So I saw people doing this in France and all this. And
you mentioned when we were emailing, or when you were emailing me about this chat, you mentioned that there was an idea floated about a sort of black sheep housing co-op traveling circus in a bus and so on.
Yeah, that's right. This is all came from Mark. It came from Tibet. I was sort of steal the idea of Tibetan Ukrainian, because this is what the whole thing with having the buses and the show and the music and circus, and you can take it anywhere. And yes, we definitely able to steal their idea. And Mark had the idea. Because Mark loved all his buses and vehicles. That was kind of his thing, really. And I liked the circus. I liked the showing up. I liked the dressing up. That's another thing I think was drawn further on from beyond the Tibetans was the Covent Garden stuff. Was seeing people dressed up. It's another excuse to, like, from punk. Well, I would love to dress up with punk, and of course the Puppy Collective are very known for their flamboyant clothes, and so it was going that way. And with there's the band called Look Mummy Clowns.
Yes,
the kids sort of pointed at the punk saying, "Look, Mummy Clowns." And I thought, yeah, that's right. We should embrace that route.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another one as well, because we talk about the spirit. We're supposed to talk about the spirit. Is at this point, it's 1983, and the tarot cards. On the tarot cards, the first cards, of course, is the Fool, or the Fou, or the Mat. It's got different names, but I think on that trip to Stonehenge, I saw a copy of this How to Read the Tarot book, and on the cover it was this card. It had Le Fou, L''FOU, and that hit me, and I thought, right, this all links not just to punk, not just to performing. This links to my it's got occult interests, which were still there at that point. And again, it's going to revive that. I thought, there's another route for that. Where's that going to go? And this all kind of came together.
This is kind of one way in which the story is developing, I think, is where we're taking it away from strictly kind of punk rock zeitgeist type stuff and getting into more kind of universal um, energies, universal archetypes, and things like that. Lao Tzu wrote a poem once that said, "Know the wise man, but stick to the role of the fool." And so, it goes back quite a long way, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I
So
think
this
that
is where it gets really interesting.
all that wisdom with the fool stuff and the fool getting away with the license and everything, all that was hugely influential. The more I sort of looked into it,
Mm.
and again, the fool being in the next to the king, the fool can be in the court, whereas a normal person couldn't. Could get to places that no one else could, and so you
Which,
have
of
this.
course, you're about to do later in the story. So, yeah.
Spoiler alert: I am King Charles.
Spoiler alert. Yeah, absolutely.
Closer than you think.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, so that was there. That, as you say, that's the archetypes of the tarot stuff. So the magic, the Crowley stuff, and trying to work out what to do with it. So that drifted more into the archetype, where the tarot was picking up on archetypes, and the performing itself was becoming more clear, less mucking about, if you like. You could actually see that you can muck about with juggling and playing guitar, or you can really put your effort into it and make something of it. And as I said, as you were saying there, that Mark had this idea of taking that Tibetan idea and getting some buses and going to Europe, and that was obviously a catalyst for everyone in Black Sheep going juggling crazy and fire eating crazy. And of course, we had old Genesis Peorage psychic TVs around at this time, and I was pictures of me juggling in my back garden with a psychic TV haircut.
Oh God, yeah, I remember.
And Fod from Black Sheep, he actually finished up fire breathing on stage in Hammersmith on a Black psychic TV gig. I was there wearing a top hat, a cape, all sorts of. I had a cane. So I was going down that kind of dressing up, almost a bit like the guy from the Tibetans with the face. I was kind of for a style look, a kind of stylish, magician-y, occulty kind of look. I mean, it was stunning. I was stunned, and then Fod was there, and Fod had a psychic TV haircut. That he jumped on stage and was fire breathing, and jumped off and joined me afterwards. It's like, who are these guys? And he felt this is it. This is what we can be doing abroad. This is it. There's something here. So again, we've got not just the mob, the Stonehenge thing going on. We've got this Genesis psychic TV, Temple of Psychic Youth kind of vibes happening as well. And then the first psychic TV album I think comes out around that time.
Right.
And then of course Psychic TV start playing the squats in Stoke Newington and Hackney, and they're doing big squatted venues with some bands. I think maybe even the Osric Tentacles, with some of the more weirder the Fuck Off Records bands. Who were kind of another strand that was going on there. This subculture of Fuck Off Records, who introduced the mob to us through one of their free festivals.
Yeah, that's a West London thing, isn't it? Really, the fuck off stuff. It's Notting Hill type area.
Yeah. They used to have, I think, Meanwhile Gardens. They had a regular spot at Meanwhile, which eventually people like the Mob and Astronauts played. All that whole crowd of bands, but along with them was all these other kind of more progressive bands, prog rock,
Right.
but alternative prog rock. So you had that strand as well. You had that strand, and they were playing. They were very good. They could squat gigs. They could find venues. So some people were very good at that, finding a venue. And they got Jen involved in that. He was living in Hackney at the time. And then you had, say, the Black Sheep, the Anarcho punks involved. So again, it's all kind of piecing together.
Is it coalescing, or are these just kind of random things within a non-coalescent bigger thing?
I think no one was coalescing. We also got in the middle of all this is the Centro Iberico. I think that's in the aftermath of that, when that closed down. So, and that was, so I think that I've got someone wanted to interview me about Centro Iberico. But I think, let's not drift into that interview by mistake.
Yeah.
because I'm still trying to get my head around that. That's another one I'm trying to put the chronology together. What actually happened?
Yeah.
Because often I just say, say things casually, and you actually think, actually, when did it happen?
We're
When did
getting to
these
that
things
age
happen?
now, I think, and that's why it's good to get all this interview recorded, because we are getting to that age where history is getting less chronological in our heads, at least. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I saw I could go back. One thing is to go back to the apple packing factory. Is let's say we were living in the field opposite. We just put some polythene over some trees and lived there, and used to go down to the local Carpenter's, I think was the nearest village or town, and go there once a week and come back with our supplies. And I remember there, an aside there, I realized you could drink white wine, didn't leave a red stain. You could drink a lot of wine every night.
Yeah.
If you drank the red wine, you'd have this red mouth. This is this telltale sign on your mouth. If you drank white wine, there's no sign that you'd
Maybe that's where the clown thing comes from.
see. It's all there, and the red nose, of course.
Yeah.
But when I was there, we only had one. We had one little one little cassette recorder. I think I had a radio cassette recorder, which the guy belonged to this guy from Ayrshire. And when he went back, he lasted a few weeks. I lasted longer when I was there by myself. And for some reason, we only had one tape. Bruce Springsteen's "Darkness at the Edge of Town," a very apt title for where we were. We were outside town, in living in the forest. No one else. It wasn't like a hippie enclave. It's just us, and then just me, the hermit, the man in the woods, crazy man in the woods, playing his Bruce Springsteen day in, day out. And that album became very ingrained in me, and maybe a lot of that still sticks in me. That album, I've tried to play some tracks thinking about this, and some of like Candace's Room is still in there. I think that was influencing some of the stuff I was doing years later. So it's strange I can still play that album, even though I must have heard it hundreds and hundreds of times. I can still play it. But some albums I've only played about 10, 15 times. I can bear to hear them again.
Well,
That's an
once you've
interesting.
been somewhere like that, the album, I suppose, changes a different energy, doesn't it? To how it would with someone else, because it's bringing all those memories with it and that context and stuff.
Yeah. I think it's also got a quality to it. It's a good album. It has that.
Yeah.
You can put emotions into it. You can put your own interpretation into a lot of the songs. It's very drifty, very atmospheric.
Well, yeah, I'm a big fan of some Bruce Springsteen stuff, as I mentioned to you before. Yeah.
I think when he does it right, there's none better. But I certainly haven't played all this stuff. I'm again to jump back even further, back to the squad at Covent Garden, the St James Street. At that point, I had a Bruce Springsteen bootleg. I must have got it at Portobello Road, and it was very acousticy, like nothing he'd done before. And that was stunning. It's I think the best album I've ever heard of his, and it got stolen off me in that squad. I've never seen it again. Can't remember what it was called to even find it now on the internet.
He did an acoustic album called Nebraska.
Yeah, so he's got Nebraska. There's another album called The River, isn't he? That's quite acousticy, and it's nothing like them.
Okay.
It's nothing like them. I don't know what it was. It's whether it was demos or stuff, but how to explain it. I thought when Nebraska came out, I thought that's it. It's got to be that.
Yeah,
It's got
sure.
to be something to do with that, and it's nothing. From what I could remember, there's nothing. None of the songs of Nebraska sounded anything like what I remember.
Okay.
Again, so he goes back. Old Brucey and me, we go back.
Yeah.
When I think with the apple packing factory job, when it eventually stops, because again, it was a season when the harvest was over, and they said, that's it. There's no work now, so that's fine. And I went to Paris, and I was juggling in Paris, busking in Paris. So again, I was juggling the apples at the factory, and what I thought I'd do was go to Paris and juggle, not for long, maybe a couple of days. I had to go there to get back anyway, to get the train back. But I was actually started to perform, started to busk on the street. Even then, when was this? Must be 83. And it means that Covent Garden, which Stonehenge would have been June 83. So Stonehenge would have been June 83. And then the juggling at Covent Garden Street Traders Festival would have been almost straight away after. That's the thing. So to be almost, which meant got home from Stonehenge and made juggling balls straight away. And so it all happened. I thought this was over about a year. It took us about a year to get it together. It could have just been weeks, and then a couple more weeks I was off in France. I'm saying, like, the reason I'm confused by this is 85, unless I'm wrong. No, it was definitely 85 when the great plan to go abroad with the mob and the buses and everything. It was, I swear to it, because I know we did it. Me and my girlfriend at the time, Cravat. We did this. We went out to a juggling convention in I say Brussels, but in Belgium, and we carried on. We didn't go home, but we prepared for this. We planned this. This is what we're going to do. It's a one-way ticket, and we thought, and I'm still thinking back there, that we thought everyone else was going to do this. It wasn't just us.
I've got a couple of questions about this, really. First one is, why Europe, as opposed to, doing it around UK or whatever? And the second one I'm quite curious about is you go to Europe, you meet like-minded people. This is the second question. In fact, are they like-minded people? Is there some kind of subculture of these kind of performers, or is it just kind of random people like you'd get at, I don't know, a chess club or something?
They're more like the chess club people because they've got an interest. You got interests at heart. You got the same aim, and you're trying to do the same thing. So it's not just random meeting people in a bar. Everyone's got their own ideas, their own plans, their own life dreams. Everyone you're meeting has got this idea that we're going to do a show. We're going to go bigger and better.
And traveling, is that a part of that mindset?
Yes, this is also the reason for why Europe is because it's glamorous and it wants, it's the idea of traveling. It's adventure. But I'd say with this, just to go back a bit there, that I carried on learning. It's like, let's say, knocking about with the guitar or juggling. Some people just stayed at that stage. They sort of enjoyed it. They could juggle 3 balls, and those who could do it easily seem to stop.
All right.
Oh yeah, I can do this. And let's say some people can really play a guitar. They can hear a tune, they can play it, and they don't understand what they got, what gift they've got, and they just never go anywhere with it. Whereas I struggle to do it, and I was pushed at it, and I finished up unicycling. I went to classes from the Covent Garden street trainers, because I work street traders, street entertainer festival. From there, I learned about a workshop in Covent Garden, a weekly workshop. I'd go there and I learned the unicycle. I learned to juggle tricks, not just balls. People there were far advanced and they could show you how to do things, which you're learning yourself. Again, a bit like playing a guitar, you don't understand how to play it apart from a chord. Maybe you can learn a chord, but how to actually do all the twiddly bits, someone's got to show you. It's a bit of effort in it. Same with juggling, you can get 3 balls in the air, but to actually do all the fancy tricks and get 4 in the air or 5 and do tricks with them, you need someone to show you, you do it like this. This is how you do that bit. And so I went to these classes, and no one else did. Everyone else was kind of happy to muck about in the garden. Then I went to these classes, and I'd come back with equipment, and people would use it. Then I came back with a unicycle. Some people could unicycle straight away. But I managed to sort of unicycle where you stay in one place. No one else managed this. Like I said, then I learned to juggle on the unicycle. And I remember I was in the kitchen at Grosvenor Avenue on the unicycle juggling 3 onions. Yeah. Unicycle, and someone's going, Jesus Christ. It's like Jimi Hendrix being amongst a bunch of amateur guitarists. So it seems you think you've gone beyond us now.
I've got to ask you about unicycling. I mean, how do you start? How do you even get on? How do you not fall off the minute you get on?
You do.
It's so weird.
And it's you learn it by getting on more times than you fall off. That's as simple as that. You'll fall off a lot, and if you keep getting on, eventually you won't fall off. You'll be able to. Because normally, if someone shows you the right way, you can probably get about 3 revolutions of the wheel first time before you should fall off forwards. If you don't know what you're doing, you fall off backwards, and you've never gone anywhere. But you learn to lean forwards and just pedal, lean forwards and pedal, and look forwards. Don't look down at the wheel. Look forwards, pedal, and so lean forwards, and your momentum just takes you forward, and eventually you get to the bit where you're going to fall. A bit like riding a bike, where the first wobble, you can correct it, and you get another 3 revolutions, then soon you're crossing a room. And once you can cross a room, It's just you go out, you've got to find the space to do it. And you go out in the street, and the trick I had was looking at something in the distance, like being a dustbin or a lamppost. I think I'm just looking at that, and I'm going to reach that. And
Mm.
you reach it, because once you learn to correct yourself, you just keep going. And then the trick is to stay in one place. A lot of people can't get that, then becomes really hard. It's tedious when you're cycling along. And I say, what's that? But to get to that point of doing 10 yards, 15 yards, and at that point you can do it. You can just keep going. That can take a week. Some people could do it in a day, but other people, it took me about a week. And I think the things about actually wanting to do it, you think, oh yeah, this looks fun. And then you fall off, and that's not that fun.
No.
And then, but other pipes, like me, you say, I have to get back on it. I'm going to beat this thing. It's not going to let it beat me. I had the bigger picture. I wanted to do this so I could learn to juggle on it, so I could perform on it. So that I had a plan. I wasn't just doing it for, oh, that looks interesting. I'm going to ride this because it'll be part of my show.
Mm.
So that's why I did that. Everything was kind of leading towards performing for me. I didn't have just an intrinsic joy in doing it. There's always an achievement. This achievement is part of a bigger plan.
That's
So
really
that's probably why
interesting.
I finished up juggling on the unicycle in the kitchen with onions. People go, Jesus Christ, And
Yeah.
then I started going to not just circus skills workshops. I went to performance workshops. A place called School for Fools had a week long school, if you like, in a old place in Hammersmith. I used to go down there every day for this week, and it was all about coming on stage, standing on stage, how to present, how to fall over, how to be funny. You'd learn not how to be funny, but how to use your funniness, how to maximize what humor's in you.
Mm.
First of all, find the humor in you, then maximize it, and then milk it.
Like a clown school, basically,
But yeah,
was
it's
it?
a class, a full school for
Yeah.
fools. Yeah, and so you can see, I was determined. I went to these things like that, because I was determined to see this to the end. And I was surprised that everyone else wasn't. So it's baffled me, because there's a whole plan. Everyone wanted to do this. So I'm sure even then there's this plan was about that we're going to go abroad and stuff.
That was the vision that you were maintaining, that was your motivation, yeah?
Yeah, but funny enough, at these schools, especially at the School for Fools, but even at the workshops, there were people with like you're saying, the chess club players. They were a different breed. They were interested in doing this, and a lot of them were interested in performing. And the School for Fools people, obviously, well, that was preparing you for performance. There's no
Mm.
reason to go there unless you wanted to take a step onto the stage, and you got this determination and incredible feelings, well, almost like a punk feeling. Remember the early punk feeling of there's something happening, because there was something happening, either between us and in the air. It wasn't just juggling balls in the air. There was a real feeling that there's something new happening here. Even the teacher was saying this is the best classes we've had, and I think maybe I was kind of taking that back to the Black Sheep, that feeling back to Black Sheep, and people there didn't have that.
Mm.
So it was kind of a bit a weird feeling, but maybe I was trying, maybe overlaying that onto this idea of going abroad with Mark, and I was then driving that, not seeing that everyone's dropping out of that.
Yeah. We agreed before we started that we were going to try and keep this in more bite-sized chunks.
Right.
So are we coming to the end of a bit here where perhaps you're
What we'll
moving
do then,
towards being a clown and away from being a punk rock Black Sheep?
what we'll do, let's get me and Cravat to Belgium,
Okay,
because it gets huge. That's a big change at that point.
right.
Right. So,
Over to you.
right, we've me and Cravat, because she started going to the School for Fools and started going to classes. There was a point in there which I think I found out last night, that my first paid gig was through this School for Fools teacher. Asked me if I wanted to do a show, and it was the same day as Live Aid,
Mm.
and that was July '85, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's a pretty definite day.
Yeah, because it's the good thing is that because it was on the same day as Live, because we went back to the hotel afterwards and watched Live Aid, so I definitely know what day it was. Otherwise, I
Sure.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
So that was July '85. So these things are happening here. The teachers even picking up on me as being a performer. So I unicycled at that gig, strange enough. So things were happening. Cravat was starting to go to these schools and sort of workshops, and she started to get into it. She started to sort of pick up on it rather more than the people hanging around, maybe because she was going out with me. But then we went off. We said, right, we're going to do this. We bought a little de chevaux. She could drive, I couldn't drive. So we bought this little yellow de chevaux. No, not de chevaux. It's a Renault 4, the small Renault 4 cars, the bright yellow. And we packed all our stuff, our hopes and dreams. And along with a lot of people from the workshops and things, we're also going to this European Jugglers Convention. And when we were there, we met up with more and more people. We're making this whole point to people: we're not going back. We're not going back to London with you guys. We're going on, and we were trying to speak to people there who were performers from Europe and who are going back into Europe, but where to go, what to do. And as your chess club analogy was very close here, that because these people, we speak saying you're going to do this, and these people very quickly pick up on you and try and give you advice, and it's not there's no randomness. There may be 3,000 people at this convention, but of that 3,000 people, there'd be 20 people saying, right, this is where you want to go, this is what you want to do, and be careful, don't go to that town and do this, and you go across the German border, don't use that thing. We're very more than you expect. More we're just leaving London going, oh, this is going to be great. Being told this, but people actually do it. Say, don't do this, go there, don't go there. And one day that convention stopped, and some people went back to England. Some were saying, we'll see you back out. We're going to come back out. Keep in touch. But then we packed up and we set off in a little yellow car into Belgium. I wondered, what the hell do we do now? And where's the mob? Where's the van? Where's everyone else? They know that it's just us now. It's just us.
Off into the unknown.
Into the absolute unknown. So we'll come back to this, what happened next time.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, Tony Drayton.
Okay.